It is March 28th, 2024, and the NFL draft is 28 days away, I believe. So less than a month away, and there's all this speculation every year. Who the Raiders are going to select and replace Derek Carr with. That's pretty much how it's been for a while. But should they be replacing Aidan O'Connell? And I'm going to make the argument that they shouldn't. Because one of the arguments right now is, Antonio Pierce has a connection with Jayden Daniels, and so Jayden Daniels is the pick. They have to trade the farm, trade Aidan O'Connell, trade anyone to get Jayden Daniels. I'm telling you right now, this would be the biggest mistake they've ever made since they selected another Louisiana quarterback called Jamarcus Russell. He too, besides his cough syrup problem, he also had a release problem. He had a long limbering release. I could see it, and I'm not an NFL analysis. Anyone could see when he lunged back, it took forever for that ball to get out of his hands. And if you look up Jayden Daniels, it's kind of hard to find these stats unless you really know where to look. Because I don't subscribe to any special websites with special fantasy stats or whatever. But what I found of his release time is 2.91. 2.91 is not going to cut it. With a long limbering body, with his arm extended way back, Sean Jones is going to average 3 or 4 fumbles a game. Mark my words. He is not going to get that ball out. You know who found this out last year? Aidan O'Connell. His first start. He took too long to throw the ball. But in his next start, which I believe was against the Giants, he led all other quarterbacks. 2.13 seconds. That's better. That's Tom Brady type of release time. That is Aaron Rodgers release time. That is Dan Marino type of release time, which probably he was the fastest. I don't know. From what I've seen, Dan Marino could get the ball out so quick. But he also had a sub-compacted, delivery. It was not a huge lunge, and he had plenty of strength. I wanted the Raiders to trade up for him. I want them to trade the farm for Dan Marino, but he would have been the worst bust in the history of the game because of the way the Raiders are. And how are the Raiders? Let's just go by their last 20 years. Let's not go too far back. Because we usually, of late, relate the misery or whatever you want to call it to the John Gruden getting traded and the Raiders losing in the Super Bowl to John Gruden. After that, everything collapses. Let's look at some of those picks. Tyree Wilson, he was picked 7th overall, and he didn't look too good. Some people think he looked better in the end of the year. That remains to be seen. He's going to have to come out and basically be outplaying Max Crosby to get any sort of credibility now, because he's picked 7th overall. And this is a common thing with the Raiders. And you're not going to see, but you're going to hear, this is what they like to do. I mean, they like to fail. They just love to pick the wrong pick. Max Crosby was picked in the 4th round. And every Raider fan looked at him and said he was a tight end. And we liked the fact that he had a lot of hustle, and he went after the ball, and he never stopped, and he really worked and turned himself into something great. Now, Tyree Wilson, the jury is out. Alex Leatherwood. From what I hear, he's not in football anymore. They wasted a 17 overall pick on him. Damon Arnett, no longer in football. Henry Ruggs, he's in jail. Jonathan Abram, he was touted before the draft. He went on Good Morning Football and, oh, look at this guy in his suit that doesn't fit him or whatever. Didn't pan out for the Raiders, and he's a backup or something on, I think, New Orleans or something. Josh Jacobs. Now, I would not call him a great player because he oftentimes was injured and coming out of plays, and I could go on and on about the ineffectiveness of Jacobs because, the ultimate Raider running back, I think, will always be Marcus Allen because he was a threat to do so much. When he was on the field, he could be a pass catcher. He could be running it. He could be throwing it. He had all the threats, and Al Davis didn't like the fact that he didn't pick him. That's the main thing with him. Al Davis, yes, severe mental illness. Neurotic. Psychopath, possibly. Okay, Cleveland Farrell. Gonna have to call him a bust. Number 4 overall. I believe they selected Charles Woodson number 4 overall. And that was one of the turning points because the Raiders used to get burned so much before that. They had one of the worst, up to that point, their worst record in the history of, their team. That was before Gruden came in. Colton Miller, he has been a solid player. Garyon Conley. Remember him? That was the guy who was accused of rape the night before the draft. So he slid down. So the Raiders were like, yeah, that's our guy. No, it's not that guy. He was soft, and he was soon gone. Carl Joseph. Drafted, injured. You always draft a guy injured 14th overall. I forget who they missed out on in that draft. But, yeah, it was one of those type of picks. I don't even know what they even thinking sometimes. Amari Cooper, he was the consensus overall best wide receiver. Raider fans, I think, unless you're a homer, came to the conclusion he's kind of a head case. He needs the ball all the time, and they made good use of him once they let Derek Carr be Derek Carr and throw the ball and not screw around with all this stupid running BS and just obvious offensive game planning. Khalil Mack the year before. That was a solid pick. That was expected to be a solid pick. There was no debate about that. DJ Hayden. I don't think so. Another failed cornerback. Orlando McClain. I believe he was a solid linebacker. Darius Haywood-Bay. Bust. Darren McFadden. Solid running back, 4 overall. Guess what? You don't build your team around a running back. Jamarcus Russell. Maybe the worst bust ever, but it was so obvious. I mean, all you had to do was listen to his Elvis drawl. You knew there was something going on. You should have known. But if you sit there, if you isolate yourself from society, like Al Davis did. Who the fuck's Darth Vader? If you're like that, then you might not be able to pick up on the fact that some guy has a drug problem. And his drug of choice was cough syrup, codeine, how he got it. I believe it was cough syrup. Down south, it's called purple drank. Disgusting drink, I would think. Michael Huff, 7th overall. Did not pan out, from what I remember. Fabian Washington. Did not pan out. Robert Gallery, number 2 overall. Did not pan out. Tyler Brayton. I don't even remember him. I don't think he panned out. Nambe Asamoah. He was the best quarterback in football. We had a shutdown corner. Forget it. You could not throw it his way. Napoleon Harris. Now I'm starting to get fuzzy. I'm not going to say was that good. These are all first-round draft picks we're talking about. We're talking about people that's supposed to be your stars. Philip Buchanan. I don't think so. Derek Gibson. I don't think so. We've gone back too far. We've gone back over 20 years. But you get my point that the Raiders have had a lot of failure where other teams have not. Someone like the Patriots or whatever, they'll trade down and accumulate picks because they know that most of the picks are going to be bad. So you need to have more chips. You can't sit there and do Las Vegas BS and think you're going to win on one spin, one pull of the handle. It's just not going to work that way, Lido. And the Raiders would be, to me, it's gonna, some of the fan base is going to love if they were to trade up for Jayden Daniels. But I'm telling you, this guy has problems. Look at his elbow. Now, I see the sports doctors chiming in and saying, oh, that's just something, blah, 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 bursitis. There's nothing to worry about. It's more of an inconvenience. No, it's actually a sign of what his arm is about. He does not have a great arm. You might think he has a great arm because he can sling it, but I'm telling you, it's highly destructive the way he is slinging it. He does not have a compact motion. Like I said, it's too slow. In modern football, where you have these, what I would call tweener defensive ends, they include people like Max Crosby, Watt, guy in San Diego, the guy on San Diego, and others like him that are not these Raider fans will remember these type of defensive ends that they used to always draft. These huge, 6 foot, 6'5", 6'6", or something, 280 pounds, fast. They look more like they just worked out in the gym. That's what they look like. They weren't really that fast. They weren't quick. There's difference. There's difference between fast and quick. It's the first step. It's that. Watch Max Crosby. Max Crosby, I guarantee, does not run a 4.3 40. However, he takes off faster than some of the people who do 4.3. I'm not talking about defensive ends. I'm saying just someone getting off. He gets off on the ball. Yes, he does go off sides sometimes, but that's not for lack of trying. My microphone's messed up. Must have moisture in it. It's rainy and dreary in the Northeast. drinking tea, listening to the UFOs coming through my microphone. But this is how you win. They've changed that position. They started calling it edge. Because the play-in now is a lankier, twistier type of player that has to get off the edge as quickly as possible into the quarterback. Because that's how, the game is now, with the new rule changes, you can't even tackle, basically. You have to stop the quarterback before he can throw it. It's as simple as that. It's the easiest way to defend, because you're not going to be able to defend a wide receiver if the quarterback is just allowed to sit back there, which is sometimes the case. People like Patrick Mahomes will just move around, Josh Allen move around, and just buy 1 or 2 more seconds. That's all it takes. And it really is. We're talking about coming down to a couple seconds. It looks slower on TV. I don't know what rate. It's much higher than the NFL films style. That was 24 frames per second. That's slower than real life. That is Gone with the Wind type of effect. Clark Gable coming in for the first time and then seeing Vivian Lee coming down the stairs where it's all dramatic and smoky or whatever. The light is a certain way, and it just, that's cinematic effect. Reality is you got a couple seconds to get rid of the ball. A little over 2 seconds, basically. And you've got to read the defenses that fast. What do you know about Jayden Daniels? I'm telling you, these college quarterbacks, he has not had to read a defense that fast yet. I'm telling you, asking for trouble. When the Raiders have so many more glaring needs. And one of the glaring needs is offensive tackle. The right tackle. Munford is not the answer. He's a backup. Raiders struggled mightily last year. Aidan O'Connell improved. So much can be expected of him. He didn't have any training camp, leading the team and, other type of preparation. But I'm inclined to think he can beat out Minshew and anyone they draft. But if you draft a quarterback so high up, there's all this pressure, especially from the owner with the bowl cut, to put him in. The minute something goes wrong, you have to put him in. But I say look at the other teams in the league who have had success as far as winning, especially. Maybe not winning at all because they've had problems like running out of quarterbacks. And the whole rule change came about because San Francisco ran out of quarterbacks. But they got to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl again with a pedestrian quarterback in many ways. Purdy is not an elite quarterback. He is not Joe Montana. He is not Steve Young in the annals of San Francisco type quarterbacks. He's not even some of the other ones they had. He is a game manager. And you need to look at what your competition in your division is doing. The Chiefs are prioritizing a cornerback and a defensive tackle. What do the Raiders have for cornerback? Because they just got Wilkens. So that's a move in the right direction. But he's no good if no one can cover the receivers on the back end. So who the Raiders have? Do not even say Jack Jones is a number one or even number two. He's a backup. So that is a type of pick. Now, I am more foundationally thinking about the Raiders, and I always do this way, that they just signed a defensive tackle, very expensive, because the idea is you're supposed to do this in the draft. You're supposed to hit a lot. That's how you win. That's how you win in the league. This is post salary cap era. This is, in many ways, the Raiders still live in the Al Davis era. I don't care what anyone says. There is some input from upstairs going in to the draft process involving, I don't care if it was when Gruden was the head coach or any of the other coaches, the millions of other coaches they've had since they lost the Super Bowl to Gruden. There is some sort of secret input because some of the picks are just puzzling. I couldn't find the video the other day when I was looking for it, but I remember when the Raiders drafted Leatherwood. Now, Leatherwood should have been a flag. I don't know, he said something like he was a social media justice warrior or something like that. Does he play football or does he do social media justice? But I remember Gruden didn't like it. Now, I don't know if that was, what's his name? Can't remember his name now. The GM. His decision. I don't know what the exact process was there. Not that Gruden has always picked well. He's failed a lot picking. A lot of people have. But if I'm the Raiders and there's no interference from anyone who puts a bull over his head to get their haircut, I am trading and would have already traded Davante Adams to move up or get more picks, rather. Not to package picks together. Like, oh, this team traded this and that, so now they have to package it together, to get, move up a couple spots. What? You're going to give up 2 number ones just to move up a couple spots to get one player? No, I'm thinking 2 players. I'm thinking the Raiders pick number 13. Lucky. And what could they get for Davante Adams? You see, this comes down to what they should have done in 2022, right? When Josh Jacobs was running so well, but the Raiders weren't doing so well, and it was pretty obvious that there was a disconnect and a problem with the bad coaching of Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr, just the disconnect. I mean, you're supposed to bring a coach in to, if you already have the quarterback in place, you're supposed to bring a coach in to complement the player. They didn't do that. And it should have became very apparent that the Raiders weren't going anywhere that year. And they should have traded Josh Jacobs, because they would have got the maximum amount at the time. I don't know about the salary cap implications at that time, But I'm just saying that's what you do. That's what you do if you. And right now, I would trade Davante Adams. Don't know what you're going to get. He's a head case. He had a down year. You can blame it on having a rookie quarterback. But I saw a lot of drop passes. I saw a lot of lack of accountability from what I can see of him. He's a prima donna. He needs a quarterback like Rodgers, who's a prima donna himself and knows how to appease that. When he goes I remember he went on and did an interview, and he's like, Davante Adams is always open. He's always open. That's who he needs. He needs a quarterback in a team that's going to base the entire offense around him and him alone. Not spread the ball around, not wide receiver by committee or anything like that. He was brought in for Derek Carr because it seemed to be the thing at the time, pairing college quarterbacks up with their college wide receivers, like with Cincinnati and Burrows and was it Chase or whatever his name is. So that was a failed experiment. They obviously drifted apart, and also the offense was not working for Derek Carr, who is really, he's cut out to be a gunslinger. That's it. Just a spread offense quarterback. So I would trade. Now, who could you possibly trade with? Who would want some player? The Patriots no longer have Belichick, so they might be stupid right now. But they're probably not going to give up a number 3. Well, the Chargers aren't going to trade with you, I don't think. You wouldn't want to put them in the same division, right? How about Arizona? Let's talk if they want a wide receiver. Arizona wants Harrison or whatever. Not that you trade up and replace, even though financially that might make sense. I'm saying you need a tackle and you need a cornerback pronto. You need to nail them. I don't know if that's possible because anything can happen. Just the list I was reading of the Raiders, cornerbacks they've selected in the first round, they've had a lot of whiffs. They've only really in the last 20 years had one turn out exceptional. What's his name? Woodson is before 20 years. That's why I say that. I'm talking about Asamoah. Can't pronounce his name. I mean, there are other teams on this list. You even have the Jets at number 10. To me, that is what you do. You trade with the Jets for Davante Adams, and you try to get some other picks too. And I know salary caps. I don't know what the implications are. I don't know how you weave that. But you need to get above the Broncos. Now, it depends on what Los Angeles does. Charges, because you really want to get a right tackle. But the Jets could be looking at that type of stuff. You got the Bears again with but you have the Rodgers and the Jets connection right there. That's the only reason I'm looking at that. I don't know if the Bears would trade down more from 9 to get other picks. And I don't know if they would be interested in Davante Adams. I have no idea about the salary caps of these teams. I'm just saying if you could get another pick. I don't know if you can even get a pick that high up for Davante Adams. He might only be worth, right now, a second or a third round pick. Really. You can call him the greatest wide receiver ever. You can do all those type of things. But you're talking about the Raiders. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to deal with players, prima donnas like that. Remember Moss? You got Moss. The only people that got Moss were the Raiders. They brought in that prima donna, and they didn't know how to handle him. And they were a joke of a franchise. And that's what happened. And the only reason the Patriots traded for him was because he was cheap, draft-wise. But I don't know who would trade. You got the New Orleans Saints right after the Raiders, but I think they're going offensive tackle. They could be moving up. They could. The Raiders and the Saints might be looking at the same type of thing. And I don't know if you can make a deal like that, but I would try. Because you don't base a team around a wide receiver. And I think Tucker is very promising. And I think he can be the Raiders' Cliff Branch type player. And that the Raiders, if they could get a cornerback in an offensive tackle for Davante Adams, just out of the first round, if they could get 2 starters, which is asking a lot, considering the Raiders' history and poor drafting skills and just how the players are, that would be an exceptional win for the Raiders. It would make players and fans cry, and the one with the bowl cut wouldn't allow it to happen. There's definitely still meddling going on with the Raiders, I guarantee. I don't know, when did Al Davis die? A little over a decade ago. I still think it's around. I still think the meddling is around. But really, you cannot build a team around Davante Adams. And why, before he just dries up completely, you should try to get something for him. I know there's an out coming up, I don't know, next year or something like that, but you wasted draft capital on him. Your draft capital is how you manage your salary cap. It's so simple. You cannot prioritize wide receiver. Wide receiver can be replaced. The production can be replaced. Yeah, if you have a guy who has 18 touchdowns and 2,000 yards, that sounds so good, but it just sounds like he took all the yards from everyone else and you lost anyway. That's how it usually works. And it would change the Raiders' dynamic. He's been vocally for Jayden Daniels. And if you're going to start listening to the players like that and allow the inmates to run the jail, allow the crazies to run the asylum, you're going to lose. You are going to lose. That is wokeness. You are being woke. Instead of getting mossed, you're getting woked. You need to stop doing that. So, Raider fans should consider the quick release of Aidan O'Connell. compared to Jayden Daniels, and consider trading Davante Adams so the Raiders can improve two glaring needs. Wide receiver is not as glaring as you think. Just because the Raiders struggled on offense last year, they had Josh McDaniels, who is the most overrated offensive coordinator ever. He needs to have Brady and all the referees in his hip pocket. And it's a little different when he went to Denver and when he went to the Raiders and how he treats people. And then you had a first time, they basically hired someone off of YouTube to run the offense. They got rid of the offensive coordinator, who was just a sub-level below Josh McDaniels, who's offensive coordinator number 1 or number A, and then Lombardi was number B. And they replaced him with a complete unknown, who's no longer employed, I believe. So you can make a lot of excuses for the Raiders' offensive woes, especially in the Minnesota game. But just the Davante Adams crybaby act, they could do away with that. You know, that they'd be better off without that, I'm thinking. Because I'm telling you, the Raiders' defense is overrated. They played some of the worst quarterbacks, the worst assemblage of quarterbacks that I can even think of. They literally played garbage quarterbacks. You go look at the schedule the Raiders played. And some of the backups and the backups of the backups that they played. All the rookies they played. And they look like garbage. All of them. And then in the offseason, they wanted to trade for garbage like Fields from Chicago. Complete garbage quarterback. I doubt they'll take my advice because all they care about is selling tickets and making money. Mark Davis doesn't care about winning because he's already getting paid. That's it. Winning doesn't matter. He's got like 10 different teams he owns. He's got winnings elsewhere. He doesn't care about the Raiders. He might sit there and swear at the fans and kick them out of the stadium for having signs. What a woke piece of you-know-what. I bet he blocks a lot of people. He probably doesn't talk on social media, but he probably has like the Raiders.com blocking people and on their Twitter page and stuff like that. Pretty unbelievable. And there's still a problem with the Raiders. Their front office is garbage. Always has been. And it's full of people who shouldn't be employed. Who are employed for the wrong reasons. And you know what I'm talking about. And it's wokeness. It's wokeness, and it's the reason the Raiders suck. Football is kind of fake, you know. It's getting faker. Especially with all these rule changes. Now the referees have more power than ever. But if you're trying to offset the referees, which is the greatest hurdle of the Raiders, not the Chiefs, not the Chargers, not the Broncos, not anyone else in any part of football, the referees are the main obstacle. The best way to overcome them is to have a properly foundation team. Raiders don't have that. They need to wake up and stop this BS. They're going to have people come to the stadium for the other team. It's always going to be like that. They blew it. They by leaving Oakland the way they did, in not like moving. There might have been no option at the time, but giving up the rights to LA, and even though LA was garbage, the time in LA was garbage. The 1984 Raiders, who won the Super Bowl, were as much part of the 70s as they were 1984. Because soon after that, they were doing their own Super Bowl shuffle. Not a Super Bowl shuffle, but they just won a Super Bowl. But it was copying the Bears, and pretty soon they got soft, and they inherited this awful, persona of gangs, because the gangs out in Compton started embracing their colors and stuff like that. And to me, they lost their soul right there. You start embracing all that crap. Where Antonio Pierce even said, "Yeah, I'm from Compton." What does that mean? You're from when the Raiders sucked? When they really just totally fell apart as an organization in LA? Oh, you're from there. Okay. So you don't know what's up. You don't know what's going on. Because that's what I remember distinctly. I could even point to the plays when they just, I swear, the play, it was Sammy Seal, I believe, and he fumbled the ball versus the Patriots. And after that, the Raiders were a much better team than the Patriots on that day. But they just sat there and just assumed. They lost the whole mystique in Compton, in LA. Raiders need a right tackle and a cornerback in the first round. How are they going to get it? Trade Davante Adams. Do not select a quarterback. Period.